Greetings and salutations, everybody. It is Mecha GM. I am joined, as always, by my good friends and co-hosts, Eric Carlson and Gav Leaf. We're here to record a new episode of Three Men and an Anime, and we're covering Eric's most recent series selection, Princess Tutu. So how are you gentlemen doing tonight?
It is too hot, and I'm going to kill every petrochem executive on Earth.
In Minecraft?
I mean,
Sure, we'll say that.
Sure.
For legal reasons, we'll
Exactly.
say that.
I mean, I agreed with the first half, but I'm now sold on the second. So yeah.
It is unpleasantly hot, as it has been for a while, and for reasons that we'll not go into today.
Yeah.
Eric's alluded to them, though, so whatever.
Welcome to Chekhov's podcast, where we exist, don't exist, might exist.
Isn't that more Schrödinger?
Schrödinger, that's what yeah, look
Yeah,
who you're talking to.
Yeah.
I'm not the intelligent one. I know things and I repeat things. I don't necessarily use them in the right context.
We all screw that sort of thing up from time to time, to be totally honest. Everybody does. Anywho, yeah, we're covering a bit of an odd duck of a series. Ha! I did something there.
It's a poon or play on words.
Indeed. We're covering Eric's most recent series selection, as I said at the start. We're covering Princess Tutu.
So,
yeah, Eric, why don't you describe what this show
Explain
is?
yourself, Eric.
So, elevator pitch for Princess Tutu is Swan-like but magical girls.
This is accurate.
Yeah.
And yet not.
and yet not. So, Princess Tutu is also gets into weird meta stuff
Oh,
about
boy, does
the
it.
nature of storytelling and bizarre mythologies and crazy surrealism, and it's like the Revolutionary Girl Utena, but way more accessible and slightly more unhinged.
Weirdly, yes.
Yeah.
Both more unhinged and more accessible. So So our primary character is a girl at a ballet school named Duck. Duck is actually a duck. She has a magic pendant that lets her be a girl, unless she does something waterfowlish like a quack, in which case she turns back into a duck and has to get wet and turn back into a girl. This is only part of the magical girl aspect of this.
Mm-hmm.
She's a triple changer.
Yes, she is in fact a triple changer. She can, when she so desires, which is usually when something bad is happening, turn into Princess Tutu, a reality-altering prima ballerina.
Yep.
And I say that because when she manifests as Princess Tutu, she does the whole magical girl transformation thing and everything, and the surrounding area looks like stage dressing.
Mm-hmm.
Complete with the background becomes like a canvas backdrop, the plants are now in pots, the floor is now wood. A lot of the stuff you don't notice at first, but it starts to become more and more obvious as things go on.
It's basically like they're telling this magical girl story in the form of a stage play.
Mm.
In and of itself, the whole premise of each episode almost is very, the sort of fare you would see in the at the theater.
Yeah.
But obviously they've got the room of a 3-dimensional space, a world that they're building, so these characters interact like normal people. Until the transformation happens, then it is legitimately you could be sat in the audience watching this play out on the stage,
which is a really cool thing and makes sense as makes more sense as the show goes on, because this all takes place in a little town whose name I can't remember and doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Very, very Mediterranean looking. It's got a canal going through it. It's the city is walled. It's got white deco and
yeah, which is really interesting, given that it's really probably supposed to be a Germanic town of some sort.
it's either
given the name of
Germanic
some
or
of the
Italian.
Yeah. Given the names of some of the characters.
Given who the actual sort of the one of the characters is.
Yeah.
Boy, that was a reveal in the last fucking episode.
So we have so the cast is also in the cast we have our um we have Muto, who is a prince who is has no memories and has lost his heart. Like he's basically a blank slate.
Yep.
He goes through like very dreamily through much of the series. His best friend, bodyguard, and maybe boyfriend, Fakir, and Muto's girlfriend and eventual antagonist, Rue.
Yep.
Those are your four.
Those are the
Yeah.
four main characters.
Those are the four main characters. There is one other main character who we'll get into in a little while. So yeah, Princess Tutu, Duck became Princess Tutu. Well, Duck became a girl, then became Princess Tutu, all in an effort because she sees this sort of lacking ache in Muto and wants to restore the shards of his heart. So that's what she does.
Yep.
She something weird and supernatural or happens. Turns out someone is possessed by a shard of Muto's heart. So she engages them in conflict, weirdly enough, and retrieves it. Now, occasionally, this starts out violently. This never ends well for the person who engages in violence. This is true for the entire series.
Yep.
Till the finale. Violence does not solve anything in this series, which I kind of like.
Oh, yeah.
You have to dance at them. I'm not even kidding.
No, he's not.
Princess Tutu says, "Please dance with me," and they go through a ballet, whatever there's a term for it, where two people ballet at each other.
I don't remember the term. There's one specific one they refer to as a pas de deux, which is a specific one.
Specifically and romantic in nature.
Yes.
But
But that's not the one they're usually doing.
not the one they're usually doing. And in this case, we find out what is plaguing the person that is possessed by the heart shard. Princess Tutu basically gets them to admit whatever their problems is, and in doing so, extracts the heart and restores it to Muto, which usually goes badly for Muto. It's usually something like unwarranted pride or
Loneliness.
fear or loneliness.
The first like 3 or 4 heart shards that he gets are like despair, loneliness.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the other one? There's 3 that are basically pretty negative.
Yeah, they're the first
stacked on
ones,
top of each other.
and really like kind of fuck up Muto.
We were laughing at the start because like she just keeps. I've returned part of your heart. Here, feel worse than you did when you started. It's like okay, just
But he's
Here,
at
have
least
fresh
feeling
impression.
something.
Here, have blinding rage.
yeah.
At least he's feeling something. I mean,
Yeah. Fakir is totally against this because reasons we'll get into.
yes, both Fakir
Now-
and Rue are against this for different
For
reasons.
entirely different reasons. Now, this is not the weirdest thing about this town.
No,
Eh.
not even close.
There are animals in this town. These animals look, dress, and behave just like people. No one sees this as strange. In fact, one of the best side characters is a cat. He's the ballet instructor for Duck and her friends. He's hilarious and eventually ends up kind of like a wise sage kind of thing and trying to help them out, but actually doesn't have any idea what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's just like giving them like fatherly advice and like rooting for their what he assumes are like various relationship woes and hopes they get over them.
Yeah. Like he's got one shtick that gets very old very quickly, but it's very clearly not intended to be serious.
Yeah. Where he is like, if you don't shape up, then I will force you to marry me. Which is cute, mostly because someone like immediately turns him down in sort of a panicked way, and then he behaves like an excited cat.
Yes.
Like complete with like stuffing his head in a paper bag and then chasing himself all over the dance floor.
Because he's a cat.
Because he's a cat.
Like all the characters who are animals that are walking who are generally walking upright. Now, note, they are not fully anthropomorphic.
Yeah. Like the Anti-Narina, who is one character we run into briefly, who is an anteater and a ballerina.
Yep. She's an anteater who's walking upright. That's largely the limit of it. Like,
Yeah, or Armadillon, who is an armadillo.
yep,
I remember that one mainly because it's a hilarious pun on his name.
yes,
Yep. There's one later on in the series, like almost like the last few episodes, where it starts to reveal more about the what's going on, and you see people enter the gates, and all of a sudden, apparently, Mom is now a rhino,
Yeah,
and
this
the
is
kids
something-
the kids that are with them commentate. He's like, "Wait, was Mom always an Indian rhino?" And the other one said, "Well, it would be kind of strange if she wasn't."
Yeah,
And they just accept it and move on.
and we'll get to that in a bit.
look at that.
Yeah, there is a whole thing going on, and they do explain parts of this.
Well, we're told exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Spoilers. The town is in sort of like a little pocket dimension. You can enter it, but you can't leave because why would you want to leave? It actually like alters your thought patterns, so you don't think of it.
Mm-hmm.
And is being run by a dead man named Drosselmeyer. Drosselmeyer exists outside, as far as we can tell, outside of time and space, inside celestial clockwork, and really just wants the story he was writing to play out the way he wants it to.
Yep.
He is literally writing a story, and all the members of the towns are, all the citizens of the town are at least bit characters in it.
Yeah. So
Everything proceeds according to his plan. He thinks free will is still a thing, and even with like scrabbling reality-altering powers, things don't go the way he wants them to all the time.
from what it presents, essentially what's happening is it's playing out Drosselmeyer's last great story, which was The Prince and the Raven.
Yes.
And Muto, basically the leads that we've got here all play out those that the main players in his story. Muto is the prince, the named prince, who, in order to trap away the evil Raven, which is the antagonist of his story, shattered his heart, stabbed himself with his own magical sword, and broke his heart into a million pieces, and locked the Raven's evil away. Fakir is his bodyguard and knight, who's, again, this is all first episode. It's not really story. It's not spoilers. Fakir is the knight who is destined to try to protect his prince, but end up being torn in two.
He jobs for the Raven is what it is.
Basically, yeah. Rue is the princess who will never be loved, and Duck. Well, this is the weird thing. Duck and Princess Tutu, as such, aren't actually in the original story. But
no, she is. She's a very minor bit part in the original story.
very minor,
in
yeah.
the actual
So
story.
basically, what's happened is they've got the three characters there, the triumvirate, and everything's kind of hit this weird status quo, like.
And the story can't continue
Without-
unless there's something nudges things along, which is what draws, which is why Tutu.
Yeah, so Muto is basically just drifting. Fakir won't let anything happen to him or him interact with anyone or anything change whatsoever. And Rue's not too worried about anything changing either. So this is why Drosselmeyer reaches out to Duck and gives her the power of Princess Tutu to try and basically break the status quo and get things moving along. Now, whether he's doing that for good reasons or not is where the story goes.
Well, it turns out not, because Drosselmeyer loves a good tragedy. That's what he's writing. That's what he's aiming for. Except, these are all real people. So
Yeah.
Yeah, because of this, whatever he's managed to do, essentially, it's real people trapped in these roles. To the point where we were asking halfway through, like, wait, are these are these real people playing roles, or is this a completely crafted town for his story? Which way we're coming at this? The answer is apparently yes.
Yes.
yes. The answer. This is something that, as you piece together exactly what Drosselmeyer's doing, what's going on, is sort of like start questioning like what is this what's happening? And eventually it turns out that, yes, these are, in fact, people called into being by Drosselmeyer's story writing, and they are, in fact, real people with free wills and desires and hopes and dreams.
And there are people in the town itself who are just normal people.
Yeah, because normal people got caught up in this because he needed a setting, so he figured he might as well just pick his home.
Well, I think what actually happens is, because when we first start the story, like from what whether it's just the animators like saving time and not bothering expanding anything, we literally have like Duck's Pond and the school, literally the only things that we see for the first few episodes. Even past the gates of the school, it seems like some sort of white fog kind of situation.
Well, no one leaves the school, like leaves the town. Like it just
But
doesn't
like,
happen.
what I mean is, it wasn't even the town. From what I remember from the start, it wasn't even the town. It was literally the school, and it started to expand as the story did, and new locations and new characters were brought in and needed, because they do even mention at the end, towards the end, when again, this is spoilers. This is down the line, but they eventually end up getting to leave the city and realizing that they didn't even realize there was anything beyond the wall. And I kind of picked up on something there that was implying that there wasn't anything beyond the wall until it was needed. Maybe I'm reading too far into it, but it just seems like that was the sort of again, it's like you say, it's a stage play. You don't need the set of wherever until you need the set of wherever.
Yeah. And yeah, as the show goes on, like we learn, like the Raven doesn't have a person analog, except for, as it turns out, Rue, who is in fact the Raven's daughter, and is sort of becomes the dark magical girl to Tutu's light one, Princess Craigie. Lots of fun with that. Yep. Yeah. Well, you always need a dark magical girl in any magical girl series.
I will say this does take it. It's based around the general story of Swan Lake, but it does take from other.
Like
shows.
Drosselmeyer's the sorcerer, but he doesn't turn into an owl. He instead has this horrible raven that is in prison that he's building a story around. The raven is massive. When the raven actually shows up, we find that it is massive and eldritch and
it's basically some form of elder god, just literally just an evil force of nature kind of situation.
And yeah, this is Princess Tutu.
Yeah.
All of this wrapped up with like general like late 90s, early 2000s like shoujo anime stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's there's like dumb like episode long romantic triangle things. There's people trying to figure out how to cook the best meal. There's all of this wrapped up in this like huge meta narrative about the nature of storytelling. And oh yeah, there's an evil secret society that's trying to stop the story, and they do it by cutting off people's hands. And
it's bad.
Yeah.
It is remarkably accessible.
It really is. I will say, I do really also appreciate, one of the things I really do appreciate about the show is that most of the main characters actually have character arcs.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the big four all do. Like, their own little sort of arc in their own way. Like, even Muto, who doesn't really have a character to start with.
Yeah.
Muto starts out as Tabula Rasa, ends up, not very interesting at the end, but,
But
not everyone can be
a
interesting.
person as opposed to, like,
an automata.
As opposed to a concussed, stoned kid.
Well, he turns into the standard, typical shoujo prince.
Pretty much. He does not live up to his namesake, I'll put it that way.
Well, he also doesn't need to fight a dragon. So.
True. He has to fight a raven instead. He does fight an eldritch horror, sort of.
He does fight an eldritch horror. Fair enough. But
Yeah. So this has no bearing on the plot, but he's apparently
Yeah,
no.
Siegfried.
yeah.
This is revealed in the final episode, and I'm like, wow, you could have done more with that.
We also find out that Fakir was not called into the story, into being by Drosselmeyer's story. He was simply someone that got caught up in it and ended up with with what was intended to be a bit role. He was supposed to job for the Raven.
Right.
But is also turns out to be one of Drosselmeyer's descendants, and kind of influences the story subconsciously, which is why there's all this free will going around fucking up his shit.
Yeah, it turns out he
Fakir
actually
turned out
has
to be a
the
really
same-
interesting character and probably my favorite.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he starts off very one note and kind of almost like the antagonist. Like
It really seems like he's going to be an antagonist at start, but he very
Yeah, he's a giant prick in the beginning.
yes.
yeah. He's like a really less cool Vegeta. But no, it turns out, yeah, he's Drosselmeyer's descendant and has the same sort of bring stories to life kind of power. Nowhere near the sort of power level, but enough just to nudge things in the direction that Drosselmeyer wasn't expecting.
Well, the big thing is that he can't directly change Drosselmeyer's story.
Right, but he can
Write his own.
write his own. So he can't. So like this is like when this power is revealed pretty late in the series. He starts like he can't bring him like he can't write about certain people, and if he does, the pen starts going on its own, or his hand starts writing on his own as it writes out Drosselmeyer's story.
Yeah.
But if the person's a minor enough in Drosselmeyer's story, like say Duck or Princess Tutu, he can influence things a lot more.
Yeah.
Which is actually a really cool thing as they do the whole trial and error thing with it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially once like we get later in the story where it's revealed that it's revealed how minor Tutu was supposed to be.
Yes.
And that her role in the story is done. Like she's not meant to be. She's not meant to even be there. She's supposed to have confessed her love for the prince and exploded into light. Because she's not. She's a tragic hero. She's not allowed to have the thing that she wants the most. Except she books that story by not admitting that. You know. Not,
There's actually a bit of a confession, except she does it through dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Drosselmeyer is sitting there in his little pocket dimension, like eagerly awaiting for her to.
The only way for her to extradite to save the shard of the shard of the heart is to admit that that she loves him, and then she'll spare delight and have ha. Oh, you clever duck.
I will say Duck starts out very grating,
Yes.
but ends up being another very interesting character.
Oh yeah, she very quickly goes from grating to very likable.
Yeah.
To being actually genuinely really interesting. I agree.
Yeah.
Rue is fine.
Rue is fine. I wanted to like her more than I did, but you can only have so many awesome characters in one show. Like she's fine. She's perfectly passable in her role. She's not standout in it, but she does her job. One of the things I kind of like about the ending of this series, nobody gets what they want. Drosselmeyer doesn't get his tragedy. Duck turns back into just a duck. Fakir is just some schmuck again. And doesn't get to hang out with his best friend. Buto and Rue get what they want. They fuck off to Storybook Land.
Yep.
Literally.
As as Prince and Princess.
Yes.
They managed to break the curse of Drosselmeyer at the end, and it's like, cool, everyone's gonna go back to the real world. Duck, like I said, Duck's gonna be a duck, and Fakir's gonna start working on his ability to write stories. And the first story that he's gonna write is the story of Rue and Muto living their life happily ever after in the Storybook Land. Which, as we find out, Drosselmeyer would have just thought was so boring. Some of the concepts that he comes out with are actually cool. Like there's a speech towards the end where he explains his whole premise, and it's like happily ever after, one boring sentence to end all stories, and suddenly, not bother having to write, just letting the imagination of the reader just decide. Oh, they get to live the perfect life forever. Boring. And he's trying to. I'm trying to write the ultimate tragedy, and the ultimate tragedy is one that never ends. And we find out he's basically trying to get this into some sort of loop where he wants a story to keep moving forward, but just keep getting worse.
Mm. Well, it's also other interesting things is that Drosselmeyer has his proxies that he interacts with the story with.
Yes.
I mean, there's one character that keeps showing up early on to like drop a bit of wisdom on Duck to push her in the right direction, and it's pretty clear that like she knows way more than she should, until it's revealed that she is literally a marionette under control of Drosselmeyer. Who of course ends up with something resembling free will of her own.
Yep. And does something to advance the story in a way that Drosselmeyer doesn't want her to.
Yes.
To help Duck and Fakir.
Yeah. And Drosselmeyer can like stop the story to appear to someone. It takes a lot out of him. He doesn't do it very often because I'm sure he considered it a hack move. But sometimes you get stuck. You need to like need to kick it yourself to get it going. It's yeah, it's a weird show. Frankly, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
Because I remember watching this years ago and going, Princess Tutu, what the fuck? And then like having someone say, no, Eric, you particularly will enjoy this. You should watch it. Okay, and after like 4 or 5 the 3 episode test, like, okay, something weird is going on. And the more I watch it, the more I enjoyed.
Yeah. No, it definitely does not put its best foot forward, especially in we watched the dub on
High Dive.
High Dive, because that's the only place we could find it, and they didn't have the original Japanese, and this is an early 2000s dub.
Yeah.
So sometimes those are good. This was okay.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, we looked it up. We looked up some of the voice actors in this show, and yeah, there's no fault in the actual talent that's in.
No,
the show.
we really think it's a inexperienced direction thing, really.
Yeah, I think some of them were also early on in their careers.
Yeah,
and later.
And several of them get a lot better as they go through the show, like Duck especially.
Yes. Duck especially.
Like you mentioned, obviously, Duck being the one that's really grating and hard to listen to at the beginning. Yeah, she's voiced by Lucy Christian.
Yeah.
Who is the current, the English voice of Nami in One Piece, to name like one thing. So yeah, she's like, she knows her craft. She knows what she's doing. Maybe not this far back then, but yeah, we figured that there was something that like.
Yeah.
I get what they were going for with
Muto's the one that really misses the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get what they're going for, but he's just like a non-entity. It's like we started drawing parallels back to, and this is probably something we're going to come on to in a moment, back to Utena.
Yeah.
And he had more agency than Muto did.
Yeah.
I don't think Muto would even move from one building to the next without Fakir telling him to do so.
Without either Fakir or Ru doing so, yeah, at the beginning at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, he does develop agency as he goes along.
Yes. At one point, it gets enough of the heart shards in that back, one of which tainted by the Raven, that he develops a weird kind of agency. He's just an evil dog fucker.
Oh, yeah. He, like, that part, during that part of the show, he might be the second most evil character in the show. The first being the Raven. Or actually, debatably Drosselmeyer.
Debatably Drosselmeyer.
He's weird.
Drosselmeyer doesn't consider himself evil. He's telling a story. And the
Drosselmeyer, I would say Drosselmeyer is definitely evil, because he doesn't give a living fuck about like what
He's
how
doing
he's
the
affecting
actual normal
around
people in
him.
the town.
It's all entirely selfish and destructive, despite that he might be building something else. The Raven is also selfish and destructive, just in a different way.
Yep.
Yeah, Drosselmeyer truly believes he's just writing a story. The problem is that he doesn't seem to put two and two together. Is that he's using actual people?
Oh no, he knows that. He just doesn't care.
Yeah,
That's like deciding who's more evil, Drosselmeyer or the Raven, is kind of tough. The Raven is very much like, moo ha ha ha, look at me, I am so evil, Emperor Palpatine.
Who's the more evil, the villain of the story or the god that put him there?
Basically.
Exactly.
They do
Exactly,
they do
Cap.
mention,
Well said.
They do actually mention in one of the things that I read about this, because I do research for this show. They said, if you
Well, I'm
think
glad
about
someone
it,
does, but I
without
don't.
if you think about it, without Drosselmeyer, because again it's revealed down the line, the Raven would never have existed.
Yep.
But then also, so neither would Muto. But at the same time, Rue would never have been stolen from her parents.
Yep.
And would have been able to live a normal life. So
It is revealed later on that Rue is not actually the blood daughter of the Raven.
Nope, he kidnapped her.
Just some babe that got kidnapped by evil space eldritch monster.
Yeah.
And quote raised end quote as its daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's been a lot of collateral damage.
Oh yeah. No, like you legitimately feel bad for Rue by the end of the show. It's like, oh, you poor woman, you poor girl. Like, oh my god.
But even when you start to like expand it and realize, the side characters and the people that have legitimately died because of what's been going on, through.
Yeah. Oh, it's a mess.
Or another. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a well done fairy tale largely, which means bad shit happens.
Oh yeah, it's definitely in the grim camp.
But yeah, I think the other bit that we hadn't talked about is like watching the relationships of the characters, like who's falling for who, etc. Because it's very clearly like set up like there's something of a love triangle between Rue, Duck, and Muto. But that over time very much shifts into like Duck still cares about Muto, but it's very clear she's falling in love with Fakir.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Like Fakir is also
Fakir is such a fucking tsundere in every way.
Oh my god, he is.
But I actually found it really refreshing about this because it was a case of like in a dozen other stories of this nature, you'd have had the standard thing where Duck would still stay, in love with Muto. Like fawning over him, pining after him, all that kind of stuff. But it very clearly becomes this thing where Duck originally saw him, became obsessed with him, and wanted him to want to help him. But there was never anything back.
Yeah.
Like there's literally even like three quarters of the way into the story, other than an obsession, which we would later realize why. Of Muto getting this obsession with Princess Tutu, not with Duck, with Princess Tutu specifically. I don't even think they have words with each other for the majority of the show. There's nothing between them whatsoever, and that obsession and love eventually becomes a desire to help him out and see the story through. But it's actually kind of mature that she kind of realizes there's nothing actually there back.
Yeah, I mean, it comes across as very much like that kind of like pubescent, like obsessive crush kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. They're all kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, and as she grows and matures through the course of the story, she sort of develops feelings for Fakir, but like doesn't really ever voice them. And the same with Fakir. Like they what starts as is frankly an antagonistic relationship to develop a
reluctant allies for a while.
Yes. Yeah.
And then like full on allies, then actual friends, and then
Yeah.
oh, is Mike go somewhere else? Nope, she's a duck.
Yeah.
Like permanently. And now the girl I'm falling for is a duck. Well, fuck.
Yeah, they do this
Fuck
really
you,
cool
Grandpa.
like opposites kind of situation where like you say, it starts off as unrequited and unwarranted romance towards one and kind of hostility towards the other that basically they cross and intersect along the way. I won't say she ever gets hostile towards Muto as such, but like the feelings of like romance kind of disappear. It basically turns out that it again against Drosselmeyer's wishes, the story kind of crosses over, and Muto ends up with Rue. The princess who will never be loved gets love.
Yeah.
And yeah, Duck turns back into a duck, and Fakia moves down towards her lake and spends his days writing stories on the dock while she swims in the lake.
Yep. It's very cute.
Yeah, they do stay together, but in a not in a romantic way. God, I hope not. I don't trust Japan.
I don't trust the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the really the big elephant in the room, as I mentioned earlier, though, is the similarities that get drawn between this and a certain other show. One was prog rock, the other is ballet.
Yeah.
Has a lot of very similar themes, and I've got a feeling... You know how everything's a fucking isekai these days? I've got a sneaky suspicion that this got onto somebody's development board because of Utena.
It's possible.
It's possible. Like I said, it is both more unhinged and more accessible than Utena.
Yeah.
But I don't... I think Utena is still the better show by a significant margin.
Yes, I would agree with
because
that.
Utena is
so just its own. It's so unique. Like
yes, like it. I guess you could call it a magical girl show.
This is better paced than Utena.
That's not hard.
No, that's not phrase. Yeah.
It's astonishing how good. Like just as an aside, it's astonishing how much we all like Utena, despite that it is abysmally paced.
Yeah. One of the most interesting story arcs turns out not to fucking matter. It literally erases itself from the continuity.
All it does is like there's some like knock-on effects for like the character development. That's it.
Yeah.
Utena is the most interesting story told by the most boring person in the world. It's like, get to the point. What are you trying to tell me? Get on with it.
But back to Princess Tutu.
Yeah.
Princess Tutu does not have any of these pacing problems.
No, it does not.
It's what is it? 24, 26
26
episodes?
26.
Yeah, and uses them fairly well. It has a couple dud episodes, but most series that
like
long.
It really feels like it felt like it could have been a little bit shorter, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Probably about an 18 episode show, I think.
Somewhere 18, 20, somewhere there probably.
Yeah.
But like I totally understand why it's not. Like
yeah. And it's not like, and it would have felt rushed and contrived in 12.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like,
No.
yeah, I'm not sure what else I can say that doesn't just give the whole thing away. Like,
this is one of those shows that we
something
can't.
that should be experienced.
It really, and it's not for spoiler reasons. It's more a
we've
experience.
Yeah,
but that's not the part. That's not like describing more of what happens. Like it really, like I will say, like legitimately, the first episode is hands down the hardest to get through.
Yes.
And it's not even something like a 3-episode test. It's more of a, can you get through the first episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. They do take a lot of like world building and making sure that you understand what you're getting into in the first few episodes before they actually start getting on with the plot.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those shows where you've got to stick with it. It will be a little bit of a grind in places. I mean, I will hold my hands up. This is not a Gav show.
Yeah, fair.
It took
Yeah.
it took some episodes I was fading, but at the end, the actual story, the thing they're trying to present is fine. I am also kind of a fan of classical music, and good lord, they filled this thing.
Oh yeah, the music's
Oh, yeah.
fantastic. The score is wonderful. Like,
Although they blue balled me with the 1812 overture. They did all the build up, and then went, well, fuck it, we're not going to do
Yeah,
the
we're
famous
done.
bit. Yeah,
no, this is not a show where they're going to fire the cannons, Gav.
no cannons for you. Also, the magical girl did not develop any form of energy attacks.
Well, no, she dances.
He dances. That's the thing.
Again, as I said, violence may be resorted to the show, but it never gets never succeeds at getting you what you want.
It involves Fakir getting his ass kicked, and then Tutu dances at them.
I did like that, how Fakir is the representation of the literal representation of violence in the world, and every time he does anything, he gets his ass beat.
Well, because he's the prince, he's the knight who's fated to die.
Yeah. And eventually he figures out the best way for himself to fight is to use his fucking words.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the legitimate, like almost a legitimate, like word for word, like scene later on where he's trying to help Tutu by writing. He doesn't know what he can do, so reaches for his sword to try and go out and fight like he always does. And he literally gets dragged back by someone who gets introduced and saying, every time you try and fight, you end up almost dead. You're not going to help though with a sword. Sit down and use your words. Like, oh, good lord!
So good. So yeah, it's a very clever show.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. If you're not paying attention, you're probably going to miss quite a lot.
Oh yeah, it really does help to pay attention.
Of little subtle things that it's trying to tell you, trying to show you, trying to do. While looking like this really... I will say, don't watch this high.
I mean...
That's a safety warning. Or if you do, plan on watching it again. To actually get the story.
I'll admit, like, I did a couple nights a little enhanced, shall we say.
Sure.
And, like, there was that time when we had to watch a whole new episode because I didn't remember anything that happened in it.
We did watch at least one episode twice because it was the episode we finished 1 week with, and the next week Eric did not remember watching that episode.
I didn't, to be honest, until we got to the end.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that one.
That issue is that I'd mistimed the gummy I'd taken. So.
Whoops.
Yeah. But there are some scenes and some concepts in this one that are just like, yeah. Like we mentioned the Anteater earlier. Okay, the Anteater is introduced because Mr. Cat keeps threatening to make all the students marry him. The Anteater is one of the other teachers who wants to marry him. And
That's a different Anteater, but yeah.
Yeah. So we have this whole thing where every time he mentions it, she pokes her head through the door. He's like, "No, I didn't say anything."
It is a very weird show.
It's a weird show. Oh, did we mention the professional ballet troupe that visits town, whose troupe leader
becomes an electric eel? Yes.
Yeah.
And they use him to save money on the lights.
And that's like the first clue that we get that people are changed when they come in because they mentioned, isn't it weird that our leader is an electric eel that can't actually interact with us? I think it would be weird if it weren't, right?
Yeah, that's what that should have been a bigger clue than it seemed like at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I distinctly remember that episode from our first watch through years ago, and I'm like sitting there like doing that whole like looking over at my friends. Do you get it? Do you see? Do you see? Do you get it?
Oh my god! But yeah,
I don't want it to seem like we're doing a really short episode this week because it's just one of those shows where you can't explain it. Like we would literally be sat here. We've already told you most of the major story points.
Yeah.
But to explain the episode is us literally trying to, in spoken form, explain a surrealist visual.
That it is intentionally surreal, and that makes it hard to break down verbally without kind of disassembling it too
Without
much.
killing a joke.
Yes.
Yeah, without killing the joke, so to speak. Not the show's a joke. We're basically having the same problem we had with Revolutionary Girl Utena.
Yeah.
Like we could talk about the characters, we can like do an overview of the plot, the animation, all the other stuff.
Utena had a much larger cast, so that obviously, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, even then with Utena, we ended up like floundering about like a quarter of the way through the episode, similar to where we are now, because it was just like, this really needs to be experienced properly.
Yeah, it's not a show. It's not a show to be explained.
No, it really isn't.
But it is one that deserves attention because I'll, put my hands up. I'd never heard of this.
No, me neither.
This was completely under my radar.
I am very happy to have been introduced to it. Even though it's not one of my favorites, it's one that needs to be more in the zeitgeist. I think, like, legitimately.
Yeah. I first encountered it with an AMV like 15 years ago.
I believe it. I totally believe that. Actually, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's it's definitely something I think.
It's a weird show. It's a very brave show.
Yes.
Like, talk about risks, and most of them end up paying off.
Yeah.
Like, as much as I say I'd never heard of it, I'm not surprised I'd never heard of it, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Because thinking of what was around at that time, this wasn't. This was like
it's
so about everything's being an isekai these days because it gets noticed and picked up. This was against the grain for the time.
Yeah, like I said, the show's very brave. Like, someone like took a big swing with this show, like funding it and putting together the team to get it started and everything. And yeah, I'm glad it exists.
I mean, the big thing is it came out in 2005, and so it anime wasn't as big in the West then. Like,
yeah,
what was it? Hang on, 2002 is when it hit Japan, apparently.
Yeah.
I believe it came out in the U.S. in 2005. I think it was Western releases. Let me hang on.
Was there anything of a sort of similar feel?
It might have been 2002. Actually,
I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2002. So yeah, hang on. Let me.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's the same sort of. That's
it came out around that area.
Like
era, like It's
Turn 8 Gundam.
Henchimuro, Chobits.
Chobits was the big romance anime.
There's some Inuyasha was going on at that point.
Inuyasha was always going on.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Inuyasha is eternal.
Full Metal Panic.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of scrolling through a list of stuff here, just seeing
what's. It was the second brief resurgence of real robot stuff.
Oh, Azumanga Daioh was that year also.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, if you're talking like this could have been like a sort of show that got memed a bit, but that got eaten by Azumanga Daioh. Like,
yeah.
Like, oh, Sheed the Ultimate Weapon was the same year.
Oh, really? Was it?
Yep, that was also 2002.
Huh. Those are very different shows.
Yes.
Gundam Seed was that year. Yeah.
There's just a bunch of stuff came out that year. Obviously, this year, but like, yeah, there's not a lot of stuff that like really is like super familiar to us in the West outside of like the big stuff.
Yeah.
Like the original Hunter x Hunter OVAs came out in 2002. Oh, Saint Seiya was 02? Okay.
Saint Seiya, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or there was a Saint Seiya of something. Saint Seiya of something where they came out that year.
Ooh, Armitage 3. I remember that one. I like that one.
Armitage 3 came out in 2002?
Uh-huh.
No way. That was a 90s show.
Armitage 3, Dual Matrix. It might be.
Oh, that was the sequel movie.
Sequel movie.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's mostly stuff I don't really know. I'm looking at the list. It's mostly stuff I don't know by name, and stuff I saw or the really big stuff.
Yeah. It's like,
so I'm not shocked
yeah,
it's not that well known in the West.
Yeah, it was. We are currently living in a bit of a golden age of anime where it's like every season has something amazing, and
I mean, there's also the fact that it's just like stuff like it's more available. Like, it's the large
Yes.
part of it, and it's become more mainstream, like legitimately.
Yep.
Yeah. Like back in the day, because we're all old.
Yeah.
Around about this sort of time, and about 5-10 years before this, it was like, good luck finding anything.
Yeah, like it might pop up on like Adult Swim or Toonami
or Sci-Fi or whatever. Like, I could probably count on one hand the number of anime that I had seen up to this point. Say when this came out in 2002, up to this point, I could probably count the number of anime I had seen that weren't marketed or packaged as kids animation.
Right.
So like the big shit, Pokemon, Digimon, Naruto, blanky, Sailor Moon, things like that showed up on Toonami or all the kids channels. With just the dubs, but the actual serious full-on anime that had that were not just cartoons for kids. Literally, I could probably count on one hand.
Jeez, could you imagine if someone tried to do that to this show?
Oh, like put this on like Cartoon Network?
Yeah. Or worse, like Fox Kids.
Oh God!
Remember what they did to Escaflowne back in the day?
Oh my God! Yeah, this would. Oh lordy!
I can only imagine the dub.
Like this, we would not have gotten this dub.
No.
And like again, like we had probably some issues with it, but this was overall pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said, this is around the time they started getting like actual voice actors as opposed to whoever happened to be hanging around.
I mean, you say that, but that's exactly how Steve Bloom's career started.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that.
He was a cleaner hanging around late at night in a studio, and they asked him, "Could we borrow your voice?"
I mean, that's how like ATV got like 3/4 of their.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that dissimilar to how Harrison Ford got his first acting gig.
That's true.
There's two ways into acting. The really long and hard way, where you work at it and develop everything, and audition and train and everything else. Or the other way, get really lucky or have family members already in the industry.
Yeah. I was gonna say there's the whole nepo baby thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's who you know.
But yeah, this is definitely a show I think definitely needs more exposure. Like,
yeah.
Like I get why it didn't at first, but like this. I legit think you probably could find its bones in a lot of newer stuff if you really look for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is for me. You know what? This is the kind of show. If you, okay, this is a very specific niche audience. Okay, and I'm sure we reached this demographic. But if you're doing any form of like English, media literacy or that kind of thing, or even media studies. And you want a show to pull apart and like do a report on, and fully investigate, and this is one that you go for because A, no fucker's ever heard of it, and B, there's lots of meat to get into.
Yeah,
there's a lot to pull apart here.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Like, if I were more prepared and better at thinking ahead, I would have an entire essay that I could read out to you guys.
Yeah,
and it would probably be insufferable, honestly.
Yeah. But like I said, for that specific niche, that's what your teacher has asked for.
Yeah.
Give them both barrels.
No, it's definitely something. I mean, we'll get into our final thoughts in a minute, but it's very much I would definitely put it in sort of the hidden gem category.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it especially after the first episode.
Yeah.
So I remember after the first episode ended, I actually just flat out said, Eric, I don't think if I was watching this on my own, I wouldn't watch past this episode. Just letting you know.
Yeah.
But I'm entirely willing to give it more.
I remember you guys had some issues.
Well, the first episode had a couple of like, it was the roughest of the voice acting was the roughest.
Yep.
Yeah.
B, it was the most we get of Duck's two insufferable friends.
Yes.
Wood chipper for the both of them.
One of them was
I know which one's
much
coming
less bad than
first.
the other.
Yeah. Well, one was all right. She was just a little blunt, shall we say. The other one
Yeah.
was your worst friend.
She has two friends throughout the whole thing.
One of them
like,
is an actual
egging her
friend.
on.
The other
One's a
is
friend, but is like overly blunt, like as Peter said. She's like, she has no tact. The other one actively wants her friend to suffer because she enjoys seeing people suffer.
because Duck is so cute when she's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never understood the point of her.
Blondie, she's terrible. Nobody likes her. I don't remember her name. She's just Blondie. We don't just. There's no need to remember her name.
Other than showing that Duck has such tolerance for such awful people, I don't know what point she had.
I don't get her.
It's like they're trying to. It was almost like they were trying to do the Greek choir kind of situation, but they didn't really comment on anything. It was more just they're in the back. They're literally Statler and Waldorf. They're in the back of every scene and just ripping at the entire
they're not as funny
time.
though.
No.
Like Statler and Waldorf are terrible to the Muppets, but they're funny.
Yeah.
All right. I think we should get into final thoughts.
Yeah.
All right. So Gav, then me, then Eric, because Eric's your recommendation, so you get the final word.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Look, I will be blunt. As I said earlier, this is not a Gav show. This is a show that I'm glad I have watched, but I will emphasize the past tense. I'll fully admit I found some episodes a bit of a struggle.
Sure.
A bit to chew through. But again, like I say, I know what's for me. You know what's for you. I'm not, or don't take this in any way to say that this is a bad show. However, like I say, I enjoyed the music side of it. I am not a ballet person.
Right.
And I don't know really with this one. I did enjoy it. I liked what I saw, but it just wasn't really tuned for me.
Right.
You're allowed to say you don't like it, Gav.
No, that's the worst thing about it. I wish it was that simple. I'm struggling to find my words for it because it's
Fair
not
enough.
that I don't like it. I legitimately can't say that I didn't like the show. If I didn't like the show, I wouldn't have been invested in it and been able to discuss this with you because I wouldn't have remembered anything. It stuck with me. It had some great concepts. It had some great ideas. It's just purely the packaging and the presentation that it's coming as. Basically, I'm bouncing off that kind of that side of it. Yeah, like don't let me neg it out. It is a good show. It is absolutely worth watching. I probably won't watch it again, but I am glad that I am aware of it. I'm glad I know of it. I'm glad I've seen it. Yeah, like I say, it's a super interesting show. Okay, if I put it this way, it's an interesting show. I'm just not sure how entertained I was by it.
Okay.
Sure. I as I said, I would. The first episode was rough for me, very difficult to get through, but it very much found its feet, as it were, as it went along, and it got better. I enjoyed the show much more as it went along. I thought the show improved significantly in the second half, where it went from it became much less episodic in the second half. And Muto became a character. Like, legitimately, that helped the show immensely. And like, the point is, for the first half, he's a blank slate. But then, he's gotten most of his heart shards back, and one of them's been tainted by the Raven, and now he's basically a villain. And has actually become a character. Now, he's not who the character is supposed to be, within the narrative, right? He's not it's not
Right.
who Muto's supposed to be. Well, except he kind of is, but It's not who the actual person is in theory. And I thought, I thought Muto was, mind you, he's a terrible person in that moment during that period. But like, also the second half had sort of the, the like most of Duck and Fakir's character growth happened sort of leading up to the second half, and then throughout the second half of the show, it introduced the single most the most interesting thing about Fakir. His not the most interesting thing about Fakir, but like the whole the battling crafting of stories thing is in the second half, and that's like some of the most interesting stuff in the story. It's just I thought that it really picked up in the second half, and I very much enjoyed the second half.
I will just say one last thing. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one thing we did mention when we were watching it, but there are a few things in this in the show that are introduced a little bit way too late.
I would agree with that. Yes.
Yes.
There's things that could have been moved earlier into the story and fleshed out more, which would have made them more interesting. But they're kind of shoehorned in, i.e., the hand chopping Jawas.
Yeah, the bookmen really needed to be introduced earlier.
Yeah.
Because they're a really interesting group that I would like to have had more of.
Yeah, I understand why they didn't, because to introduce them, you'd have had to already know about Fakir's ability.
Well, not exactly, because to introduce them, you really need to know that, Drosselmeyer's story is a living, breathing thing, basically.
Yeah.
And that he's done it before. And they don't want, and like, we were introduced to like the endings of some stories being torn out of the books before that.
Right.
But like we needed a little bit more like sort of them sort of like seeing more of them. Not even like knowing who they are. It's like, who the hell are these fuckers? Like, what's going on with them?
Yeah, seeing them doing stuff in the background.
Yeah. Would have been nice. But like that's a nitpick, to be honest.
Yeah.
I as Gav said, the score is brilliant. Like they use the classical music they use absolutely brilliantly.
It's literally greatest hits of classical music.
Yeah, but they're well picked is the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I there are lots of the animation is. Eric will probably talk more about this, but like there are moments when even I'm like noticing, the animation in this bit is really really good, and they do some really interesting stuff with like how they choose to animate stuff. Like how they choose to animate Tutu is one of the things Eric pointed out, and is absolutely right. That she never walks as Tutu. She dances, like, always. She's almost basically always on point. Like, which, from understanding how on point works, sounds like hell on earth, but
her feet must look terrible.
Well, that's the other thing, because obviously they live in a dancing school.
yeah.
Duck is actually like the worst student. She can't dance.
Right.
She hasn't even learned how to do on point yet. But
I mean, she's a
when she
beginner,
becomes-
but yeah.
Yeah, but when she becomes Tutu, she's like the perfect prima ballerina.
Yep.
Like, we never see her do anything that isn't graceful apart from when she's in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I'm very pleased to have watched the show. It's not what I'm going to rewatch soon, but I could see rewatching it at some point. And I definitely recommend giving it a shot at least.
Mm-hmm.
If you at all think it's something you might like, give it a shot. Like, it's worth seeking out, basically.
Yes, absolutely.
So Eric, it's you got the final word.
So this is Eric does something weird again.
The deuce, you say?
Yeah.
This was. I kind of figured that this wouldn't be a great hit, but I was also like, I want to do something weird. And, it's been literally more than a decade since I've seen this show. Let's do Princess Tutu.
Sure.
And so, like I said, the show's accessible but weird. It's like a Verhoeven movie in a way. It could be enjoyed purely on the surface level as like this sort of like fun, if a little weird, magical girl thing with like pretty ballerinas dancing around and like pretty boys doing pretty boy things and all this other stuff. But like as you crack it open and look at it, there's a lot of weird stuff going on that becomes further and further to the surface as you go on. And what you get past the insufferable first episode, we all agree the first episode is garbage. Like, but there's a lot of just really cool stuff in there. Animation wise, it's mid for the era. It is better than it needs to be in a lot of places, and never dips too bad ever, thankfully. But it's about what you could expect for a show from that era.
Yeah.
Nothing really like nothing really like blows your brain. This is amazing animation. But a lot of like nice little subtle things in there, like Peter pointed out, like Princess Tutu is always on point. Duck is never on point.
Right.
Just neat stuff like that. Like there are more examples that I had in my head and completely fled when I tried to give them voice. But but yeah, and you like classical music, you will like the score of this show. Like,
yep.
It is straight up classical music all the way through. Penguins all the way down. Does a penguin show up in this show? I don't remember if a penguin show. It must have at some point. I just don't remember.
Yes, there was a penguin.
Yeah,
it was. I think it was either the pianist or organist at some point, if I remember correctly.
Yes, you're right. It was the pianist. But yeah, it's a fun, weird little show that rewards you for digging deeper. Which means, yes, of course I enjoy it. And deserves to be viewed by more people. And like, I'm gonna tell you some stuff right off the bat. One, this looks like the most girly show ever. I don't care how macho you think you are, you should watch Princess Tutu.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
2, the show is weird. Be prepared for that. 3, give it a shot. It's a fun, weird little show that like just sort of. Sorry, I'm becoming less articulate as I go on. I like the show. It is not for everyone, and getting through those first couple episodes is a slog. But it is absolutely worth the time and effort to do so. Yeah. Track it down and give it a watch.
Cool.
That's me.
Yeah, so that's I would say definitely 2 full recommendations and you probably should check this out from Gav.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm not, like I say, I'm not I really don't want to knock this show. This is not a show I didn't like.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
No, like as I've said before, I don't know if there's definitely a can be a disconnect between things that you think are good and things you like.
Yes.
I
I know that quite well.
It is a thing that a lot of people like. It's one of my hobby horses of late has been pointing this out and saying, "Look, guys, you can like things that you can dislike things that are good that you think are objectively good, and you can like things that you think are bad." Like,
when would that point of view ever come in useful on the internet, Peter?
I have no idea. Like, as an this is wrapping things up, but as an example for the latter of something I really like that I think is not good. One of my favorite movies is The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. This is not a good movie.
It is a wonderfully terrible movie.
But I adore it. And I don't adore it ironically. I just adore it. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's bad, but it's fun.
So I came from a family. I was raised on 80s action movies.
Right.
None of them are good. But I will sit down and watch Commando any day of the week.
Hell, there are a bunch of Godzilla movies that are pretty freaking terrible, but that I love.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, Godzilla movies. Like I adore Godzilla movies.
Now there's some that are very good also, but
yes,
like the original.
A movie that is phenomenal that I can't stand. Requiem for a Dream.
Yep.
Best movie I never want to see again.
Yep. Yeah. I'm at 100% there. I mean, as I've said before, like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, 2 movies I think are brilliant, and I cannot stand them.
Bob Dylan, another one.
Yo,
Can't stand Bob
sure.
Dylan. Still amazing.
Oh yeah.
Just can't stand the fucker.
But yeah, so little diatribe there to wrap things up. But
Yeah.
so Gav, have you picked your next series choice?
I think so, but I'm juggling one or
Fair
two
enough.
others. So I'm more or less set in, but I'm just checking a couple other options.
Okay, cool. Then you will find it. Then, dear listeners, you will find out what it is when the next episode goes live. Then.
Yes.
But that's going to do it for this episode, folks. Thank you so very much for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed. Hope you learned something, and we all hope you check out Princess Tutu if you haven't already.
Yeah.
But other than that, we hope to see you all next time. Until then, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.